Hey, everybody, welcome back to another 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers. Today, I have this beautiful woman sitting in front of me who I have no idea who she is. She just waved to you, she waved to me. And so, what's beautiful about this whole process that I'm finding out and what I'm enjoying incredibly is that when two strangers walk into a room, really not knowing much about each other, but trusting the idea of what would it be like for to have a conversation with a complete stranger and get to know them a little bit. I've had an overwhelming response to it. And I have to say that it wasn't my idea originally. I read about it from a man in Australia who I've had on my actual podcast. And his idea was to have 500 lunches with 500 strangers, and how often he was getting rejected for like 95% of his invitations were rejected and just a few of them said yes. But over the course of a year, he's had over 100 conversations. And so I had him on my podcast and I said to him, boy, I love your idea. I want you to know, without even knowing you, you just inspired me to do this 50 Conversations with Strangers. And he said, I have to tell you, it isn't my idea. I stole it from another woman who was a really shy woman who's become a really good friend of mine. And she had a hundred lunches with strangers. So I'm talking to her about being on my podcast too, because it just, what happens is this butterfly effect happens when we start to get inspired by people and do things. So we never know what's going to happen. Today, I want to introduce me and you to Fei Wu. And Fei, it is such an honor to have you here. I love just the whole backdrop of what I see there. I love the paintings that are there. I love the colors in your outfit. So already I love you without knowing anything about you. Welcome to 50 Conversations with 50 Strangers.
Thank you so much, Danny. I'm so glad to be here. It's fun.
It What inspired you to reply?
Yeah, so I started doing something very similar to this in 2014. I turned 30 a year before, and I decided it was time for me to capture conversations with people that I really enjoy hanging out with, I admire. And at the time, a lot of those folks were my mentors, even though not on paper, not
Yes.
assigned to me. But I was really lucky to have met them. And just like you, I was just felt so liberated and celebrated just by having them in my life. And I don't regret having those conversations because later years when I miss them, I would listen back to the conversation.
Wow.
It's worth $1 million, if
Yeah.
not more.
There's something so beautiful about it. The person that I said originally started it, this woman by the name of Kaylee, she actually she did a TED talk, and she wrote a book called 100 Conversations with Strangers. So it was, or 100 lunches with strangers. I don't know what it was, but what a fabulous idea. Let me ask you just a simple question. And it seems like it's very simple because most of us answer it very quickly.
Mhm.
But I want to ask you, as a person who's really interested in listening to you, to go a little bit deeper. The question is basically, how are you? And it's such an easy question for us to say, great, fine, good, and we go on. But
Mhm.
we live in a world right now that is rapidly changing around us. It's hard to even remember that 2 years ago there was the Me Too movement, which seemed like it was this huge upheaval in our
Mhm.
society. But then coronavirus has come, and Black Lives Matter has come, and we're really being asked to redefine
Mhm.
some of our conceptualizations. And we have a civil war going on in our country, in America, that is an
Mhm.
intellectual civil war. And
Mhm.
so, and I'm assuming from your name that you're Chinese, and we have
Yeah.
a president now who's calling this the Chinese virus,
Yeah.
and there's so many things that are happening that are meant to just tear us apart. With all that as the backdrop,
Mhm.
how are you?
Yeah, I was reflecting on that just earlier today. I'm doing really well, and I was surprised by this for a bit. I guess, I'm in a very privileged situation where I think about Chinese students who and international students who are basically forced to go home if their schools won't open, if they're simply learning online on Zoom, they're forced to go home. And I thought about myself in that situation 20 years ago or
Uh,
15 years ago. Uh, it would have been absolutely devastating. And I'm in a privileged position where I've been working in the States for a while now. I was in working in corporate America with some good savings since then, 401k, right? These are boring, boring topics, but really led to some stability of my life right now that's can be overlooked. After that, well, since then, 2016, I started my own company. So I think I feel so privileged in a way that not only I am comfortable working from home, I've been teaching and mentoring a lot of other people in making that transition. It's not that trivial. It's not just the hardware and software, but the mentality of dealing with working from home. And a lot of people are really enjoying it. But they do have young kids at home. So there are a lot of conflicts that they may or may not be aware of in the past. And it takes a lot to adapt to a new lifestyle. So I feel really good about this because I feel like it's a unique place. Maybe it sounds almost selfish, but because I can be of contribution in other people's lives. It makes me incredibly satisfied. Everything you said is absolutely true, and it's so daunting on so many levels. The current administration, the coronavirus being called the name where a lot of Chinese people living in the U.S. and possibly worldwide are being discriminated against. I recorded a video called "How Chinese People Actually Feel About This" and how we, as a cohort, we work so hard, we want to be of contribution. And I have a sense, without knowing you, Danny, that you probably have a lot of friends too who are Asian, who are Chinese. You
yeah.
probably have an idea of who you're dealing with, who we are as human beings, and it's very hard. So it's a very tough balance. And what I want to focus on is not things I cannot change, things that have happened in the past, but I think about how I use my tiny little platform, whether it's the podcast or YouTube, to celebrate people of color and to support one another, to collaborate more. And that's what I want to focus on. So I think that that's what's going to help us propel forward and to seek change.
What a beautiful summary, and what a beautiful way to view the world. I only wish more people would listen to what you just said and choose to act accordingly. Because what a kind way to view a world that is in distress. That's what we really need right now.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit, because I only know of you a little bit. I'm not even sure how I know of you. Um,
Mhm.
but I don't really know who you are and what's important to you. You told
Yeah.
me a little bit there, but who are you? What do you do, and what's important to you?
Yeah. Danny, I'm curious, where are you located? I try to figure that out.
I'm in San Diego, North County of San Diego.
Oh, no way. Well, speaking
Where
of
are
which,
you,
that's one of
where
my favorite places.
where are you? Are you
I'm
in
in
North?
Boston.
Oh, in Boston. Okay,
Yeah,
fabulous.
I would say what's important to me, well, my favorite cities. It's interesting when we talk about places where we live, and I'll definitely answer your question shortly. I think some of my favorite cities, other than Boston, are more recently New York. Growing up here as an adult, I didn't really enjoy New York at first, which is very chaotic. It was like dirty in a lot of places, but I appreciate it now. I love Montreal for all the circus
Oh
arts, for the
yes,
people and food, for the culture, for the equality, I think, in a way of English speakers and French speakers, born without a choice. Actually, learn both languages is so fascinating. I love San Diego because I am a skateboarder. Well, I used to be a skateboarder. I love to learn surfing. So that culture and the people there, people I encountered in San Diego are just so incredible. And Portland, Oregon, for
yes.
all, so these are literally my favorite places. So you live in one of them. Those things I just mentioned are very important to me. I think food and culture and art and sports in general, but I think not just any sports. Even though I was a hockey player, believe it or not, in an American school, but I appreciate the team sports aspect of things. But there's a sense of freedom, there's a sense of connection and belonging and being so connected to the universe and earth. For example, surfing, being outdoors, that is just a phenomenal experience for me. And
Yes.
I know things have changed a lot since the pandemic, but other than that, what's also important to me is I joke about like I am a content creation addict. I really like creating. I love teaching. I used to doubt myself of, oh, maybe I don't really know that much more than anybody else. But then I got this T-shirt from ConvertKit. It says, "Teach everything you know," because everything we have lived through as an individual, it doesn't matter if you're 14 years old or you're 98. There's something that you know that I don't. And I think I finally came through that, and that's why I was able to build a platform right now with a lot of collaboration with brands, and it's so exciting for me, like baby steps, but that's the world I'm living in and what I think is interesting and important.
It sounds fabulous. And so how did you get over that hump of I don't know if I have anything to teach? That
Mm,
self-doubt place that so many people find themselves in, because I bet there's somebody listening now that says, boy, she seems so successful, she seems so capable, she seems so competent, she seems so good, and
mm.
she skateboards and she surfs. I love that. That's like a big at hockey, like that's like you seem like a little person, not in size. Like
Yeah, I'm
I want
only
to
5'4", so
yeah, I want
I
to
am
imagine you
small.
to be a hockey player,
Yeah.
but I love all those surprises. But the biggest surprise for me in all of this is I love when people go through their self doubt
Mhm.
and still get the T-shirt that says "Teach what you know" in
Yeah.
whatever format that comes. How did you pass through that place?
Yeah. I think podcasting was that journey for me because I would like to say that, yes, I turned 30 and a lot of my fears truly kind of went away. And there's a second phase, I think, as a woman, but every woman is different. And I recently talk a lot about women of color, immigrant women. I'm happy to share those stories. And like yesterday, I was like teared up while I was going live. But, I think because of podcasting, I started a podcast at a place where I was working in business consulting, advertising, marketing, highly, highly competitive place where honestly people are very well accomplished. Also, people happen to be good looking. I joke around with my mom because when you don't have a product, right, you have a service, and people are basically the service that you provide to your clients. So the way you look, the way you sound, where you come from, these things are really important at the places I worked at. Um, not to talk down on these agencies, but that's just partly the culture. And a lot of times, not just because you're an immigrant, but I later on learned a lot of people, young women felt like they were never heard. Their opinions were incredibly unimportant.
Yeah,
And right, and then I look back to me speaking English early on as a second language, in college, going through college, and I one day I reflected like, wow, I said very few things in college. I'm like, I could probably count the number of times I spoke up. And unfortunately, graduating from college right into business consulting was very, male, white men dominated world. That in the meeting, even if they said, "What do you think this situation?" Even if you raise your hand, people are like, "What is she doing?" So
right.
very quickly, you learn not to speak up. So I think that had everything I wrote was email, right? I never really sat down, reflected. So for me, even though I like to say, oh, I just got older, so liberating, 35, now I'm 37, I'm good. I think that journey of being a podcaster was so profound for me. Not that so many people listened to my show and praised me, gave me 5 stars, but it was the fact that, I had a little internal breakthrough of thinking, wow, I didn't know how to say that word I practiced 50 times. I sounded silly. I clearly sounded nervous. At some point, since since maybe 2 to 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, very recently, that I felt like that like this weight, thousands of pounds just went off my shoulders. And I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna be me. And for people who are listening to this, there's that ebb and flow because there are days where you don't feel like yourself, where you don't want to be yourself, and that's okay. But gradually, as you get older, for me, that was 35, that you realize that, this life right here, this is the real deal. This is not a rehearsal. So right, you've got one shot. Might as well give it all you can.
I love that. And ideologically, I'm not sure we have one shot, but it's okay. Let's believe for the time we're
Oh,
here
I
that we have.
actually I don't believe that. I know that I'm actually very superstitious. I cosmology, or is that how that's how you say it? Like I'm so deep into that. Like I actually don't, I do believe circle of life. I do believe we live more than once. So,
Okay, I love that. Okay,
um,
but even so, whether we have whatever you believe, because it's not about what I believe or what Faye believes right now. It's what you believe. Whether you believe we have lots of times to get it right or just this one shot to do it, why
mhm,
not do what she's saying and take advantage of it and go full out?
mhm,
I realized a long time ago that even though I was tested as a genius IQ, I realized I wasn't smart enough to remember who I had to be with, who I had to be with. And so I realized, like, why don't I just be myself? Because
mhm,
then I don't have to occupy the space of trying to put personas against personas against personas. And God forbid I go to a party where several people that I'm different personaed with show up.
mhm.
I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be like schizophrenic.
Right.
And so I said, I'm just going to be me, and whether people like me or not, great. You know, if they like me, great. If they don't like me, that's just fine too. They have every right to do
Mhm,
that. I want to address one thing you said about the agencies and looking a certain way and doing that, because one of the things that about me is I've never looked the way people look. I've never felt like I fit in. And I'm going to ask you a question later on to see how
mhm,
you feel. But I remember it being feeling very isolated in in a big portion of my life, because I wasn't like other people until
mhm,
something clicked, and corporations started to bring me in because they were in search of ways to innovate, and they continued to see the same things the same way, and they
mhm,
were looking for somebody who could come into their room and show them something different or invite them to see the world differently.
mhm,
And so I was invited into some of the biggest boardrooms across the world. And I would come in a t-shirt and jeans, and they would be in their three-piece suits, or in their, Armani suits, whatever they were, men and women both,
mhm,
And I remember walking in early on and people saying, "Can we help you? Or are you lost?" And I said, "I think so, but maybe I'm supposed to be here." And
mhm,
I said, "I think you hired me to come and do something to work with you on innovation." And they said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. We just thought, you wouldn't look like the way you
mhm.
look." Right.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, did you want me to look just like you? Is that the way you wanted to innovate?" So, what do you find has been your advantage to not looking the way people look, even though you look well put together, you're attractive, you're wear the right clothes, but what do you find is the advantage of looking different than the white male driven society that you worked in?
I had to ask the same question to Dory Clark. I consider one of my mentors, and she called me colleagues. I'm like, oh, come on. But I asked her the same question, that what if you are, especially for people who want to work in technology, which these days there are a lot of women of color working in tech.
Yeah,
And what if you don't look like Zuckerberg, you don't wear a hoodie, you don't fit in that the realm? And she said, well, at the beginning, it's really hard. However, once you break through, you become incredibly memorable because there's so few people that are like you. And I realized that in recent years, again, that I stood out. In fact, one of my clients, I it was so incredible. He is such a wonderful client. I can just call it out, Michael Lecky. And, he's white, living in Connecticut, and he has a lot of options and resources to tap into people who fit, the norm to work
right.
with. And yet he hired me, and he admitted the other day, he said, you know, he's like, I realized that you could help me see things that I don't. But then I realized it's not about me. This is not praising me. This is about a man of such awareness of his surrounding, who's ready to, take that leap.
Yes.
And right, like I become that leap culturally, even though yes, I have the credentials and the testimonials and all these things, but it can be very uncomfortable for people. And that's something that I kind of brought up to my, like, something my mom realized. My mom thinks I'm incredible, but she's my mom, and she heard it a year ago. She's like, what, like dating is more challenging for Asian women? I mean, maybe not on paper, maybe not the data you get from Match.com. Apparently, Asian women are the most desirable, right? But it's interesting. Like, she just learned. I mean, I've heard that. I've gone on dates when I was much younger where men is like, well, I'm just dating, but I can't really bring you home because I don't think my parents will accept you.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, we're in Boston here, so we're, and then they needed to admit that, right? And but first of all, I had no interest in this person whatsoever, so that's
Right.
all well and good. But these are the challenges that you do face. But sometimes being different is good. I think, to be honest, like to lead into anything you want to find out about me growing up in China, I'm willing to share. But I was always the odd one,
Yeah.
like you, Danny, and I felt very different, liking boys' sports and all that. I wanted to be different. So I think I was okay with that.
Yeah. I think there's something so beautiful, and it so confuses me
Hmm.
because I think there's something so beautiful when we decide to just be ourselves, whatever that is. Because it's almost as if we're trained by the world around us not to be ourselves. We're
Exactly.
trained to try and be something other and trying to be something different. And I find a lot of people, I'm friends with some of the richest people in the world. And I'm friends, honestly, with some of the poorest people in the world.
Hmm.
And I love that. I love the dichotomy because I love that what I see when I look at both sides
Hmm.
is that all of them want the same thing. They just want to be loved and accepted. They want to be listened to and heard. They want to be acknowledged for what they believe and validated for saying it.
Hmm.
And I realized I could do that. But what's the most interesting thing is I don't understand why there's this push to try and be other than we are. Because some of the richest people I know who have done that, who have made their fortune by denying themselves, have all the money in the world but no fulfillment. They end
Yeah.
up they end up feeling so empty and so alone because they're not able to be themselves in the world they live in.
Yeah. There is that. I think there's quite a bit of like dichotomy going on there somehow, that I even look at my own life to say that as a content creator, like we have chosen, I mean, not immediately to become millionaires, because you have not, oh, you want to become really rich and wealthy at least 10, 20 years ago, go work at Wall Street and, go get a steady job, investment bankers, hedge fund managers. I mean, you could list specific roles. I mean, these days doctors are working hard, but even that is not a guaranteed money. That's very competitive. So if you choose to be doing what you do on paper, doing what I do, well, almost sounds like we're not that interested in money, right? And at the surface level, and I realized like what the situation I'm in, and not really for the first time, but for the past few years, to be honest. I live in a part of Boston, specifically Newton, that happens to be wealthy. And, the house I'm living in was purchased 20, 30 years ago. So it's worth a lot more today.
Yes.
And my mom and I have been living oceans apart, right? And she lived in China. She became ill, and then we treated her. She's diabetic, and then just like a lot of unpredictable things that could happen. Not everything is life threatening, but as I'm getting older, I came to this country when I was 17. I'm 37 now. So I realized, wow, like I hit a point to say, how many more really awesome years do I have left with my mom? We can all put a number to it, and anything could happen. So I want to be close to her. And I was faced with a reality, because you mentioned rich people get to a certain place. I was faced with reality to say, oh my God, have I chosen the right? I've chosen the right path for me. Have I chosen the right path for us being my mom and me?
Yeah.
I wish I could just toss out $3 million right now and buy a house right here. And that's something I really, really struggled with mentally. And I don't want her, I want her to stay here. I want to be able to support her. She spent all her money on my private schools and all that. So
Right.
it's my turn. So I definitely thought a lot about that. And so I'm kind of not surprised in a way, as part of this conversation, to think that, oh, people think money's so superior because it does solve for a lot of the critical issues. However, that doesn't stop there. And what I learned recently is that we can creatively solve for not having $3 million to buy a home in a rich town. We could figure out other things and ways that I can be, supporting her. So
Yeah.
it's yes,
Well, it's so interesting because living in San Diego, I grew up in Philadelphia. So
right.
about a year and a half ago, the house that we're living in, I bought as a trust because I have a developmentally delayed daughter. I bought it as a trust for my daughter.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I decided, hey, you know what? My daughter isn't so happy in the situation she's in. Let's just take a move and go back to Philadelphia. Well, we
Hmm.
live in a probably a 2,500 square foot house in San Diego, but we're a
Yeah.
few blocks from the beach, and so the prices of these homes are so outrageous, and
Yeah.
it's so inflated that we could have moved to the nicest section of Philadelphia where the grant where old money has been living for a lot of years.
Yeah.
We could have had a house 3 times the size of the house that we're living in for a fourth of the price of what our house would sell for here in the nicest section. And so we decided, hey, let's do that. And then the court said, no, we can't have you moved because the court actually owns the house and blah blah blah. That whatever came. But where we live is it is so interesting because moving one step away from
Hmm.
where we live, our options are so much more. Um, let's go into a lightning round because I don't want to miss this part of it. Okay. I'm
Okay.
just going to
Sounds
ask you
good.
quick questions. You can answer as long as you short as you want. Okay.
Okay.
Some of them will probably be short answers, but go as do whatever you
Yeah,
need
I'll
to do.
give you some more answers. Maybe we'll keep it a
Okay.
little bit shy. I'm familiar with this from the Tim Ferriss show.
Okay. I love it. Are
Yeah.
you a dog or a cat person?
Dog.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Tea. But for a
Fabulous.
reason, I used to like coffee, not love coffee, but I do have like GERD and acid reflux from a few years ago. Just playing it safe here,
Okay. You're making you made your. Would you say you're a person that lives in the box or out of the box?
out of the box.
Well, I know both of these are important, but I'm going to ask you to choose one, not both. Okay.
Mm.
Do you feel that it's more important for you to have the space to speak your voice and to get your message out, or do you feel it's more important to create a platform for other people to be able to speak their voice and be listened to?
Oh, interesting. For other people to speak up and be listened to.
Well,
Because because that's what we're doing. Because when you allow other people to do that, it does elevate you and your brand too in a very authentic way.
yes,
So,
yeah. It's really interesting. If I were just to jump in 1 second, oh
mhm.
my God, sorry for all this, stuff coming. I hear all
It's
these beeps
okay.
coming in. My apologies. Um, Part of what happened is in listening to other people and creating the space to listen to other people, it's actually what gave me my voice, which is my voice is to listen because the world speaks so much and listens so little. To
Hmm.
create a revolution of listening is part of my purpose, and it's so beautiful now for me to see that. So it's fabulous. I think I know the answer to this because of what you've already said, but I don't want to assume that I do. I want to hear it. Have you felt like you fit into the world or that you're different from the world?
Oh, definitely different.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
Um, and would you say you live in your head more or in your heart more?
Heart all the way. Yeah.
Fabulous. I'm going to ask you this question and then I'm going to follow it up with a second question. Would you say you're a leader or a follower?
Leader.
Fabulous. So in the sense of leadership today, if you look around the world, especially in America, our leaders seem to be very siloed.
Hmm.
We lead within our silos, and we find a silo of people who believe like we believe, and we lead and we direct. The easiest example is to look at politics. We have our House, we have our president, we have our Senate, we have all. But Republicans have stayed pretty true to Trump,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Democrats have stayed pretty true to bashing Trump. I mean, it
Yeah.
it doesn't matter which side you're on.
Yeah.
In both sides, it seems like leaders
Hmm.
within their own silo, there's some things that he's done that have been fabulous. There's some things that he's done that have been atrocious. But I don't see many people within the Republican camp saying, we just can't support you on this. It's sort of
Hmm.
as if everybody toes the line. And also in the Democratic camp, I don't see anybody saying, God, let's give the dog a bone. What he did there was actually good. The economy did pick up. He did stop flights coming in. but everything is wrong, which makes everybody just fight each other. And nobody's willing, very few, not nobody, but very few people are willing to step out of the box and say, hold it, we need a real leader that's not just going to bash the other side, but that's going to look for how do we come together. What do you think about that, being a leader?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked this question. I feel like when it comes to politics, it's something that I grew up with, right? In China, my dad was part of the Chinese army, but it's something that we always avoided talking about. Like he had such passion to talk about politics. My mom were like, no.
Right.
Uh, and what I think about this is like, first of all, I don't think I have a easy solution. I don't think I have a clear vision to solving for it, to be quite honest. But I think it's a really hard problem to solve for. I think number one, we need to not, it's so easy to be selfish, right? It's easy, imagine if you're Chinese, if you called this Chinese virus, and the next day on the article that somewhere in San Francisco, in California, a Chinese woman was walking across the street and the bus drivers, not the bus driver, someone in the car yelled out that I should just run you over. It's
Yeah,
very hurtful. It doesn't matter if it's Trump or otherwise. Like it's very easy for me to draw that conclusion to say he is the wrong leader, right?
totally.
And and the same thing happened. I have a friend who has a younger brother who is a police officer that they have a terrible relationship together. But because of, you know, not just recent events, I'm talking about even 4 years ago, he felt very protective of his brother all of a sudden, to say that I need to vote for a president who are protecting the police officers. So I hear these conversations a lot, and I find it really fascinating that at the end of the day, we're going after our self-interests, our family's interests, people who are love and dear to us. We don't really have a vision. We are not trained to have a vision to say what's good for the greater world. And then some people say it's a privilege, like, oh my God, Faye, or somebody else. You think about the world. I mean, people say it's a privilege. We don't have a roof on our head. We don't have enough food to eat. How can we think about the rest of the world? So, you know, it's like, so I think it's a really hard thing. I don't know how to really solve for that, but I think compassion and what we're doing now to understand humanity, what we're doing now to have a conversation is really helpful. That it's interesting. I'll share a quick story that at my
Please.
old company, there was a checklist of things that called the onboarding checklist for any new employees. And I remember there were 50 things to check off, like sign up for your 401k, finish this questionnaire. And somewhere there, I think towards the end, it says, please contact Faye at this email address so she can take you to Chinatown, which was walking distance away from our office. And as a result of it, a lot of people reached out. And I can't tell you, Danny, like I took so many people living in Boston, growing up in Massachusetts, where there are a lot of Chinese people and Chinese restaurant. I took so many people to eat dim sum and Chinese food for the first time in their lives.
Wow.
And that is really profound, right? Like I realized that that has something to do with politics as well. That how can you make a decision on something when you know nothing about it at all? How can you
Totally.
make a judgment on Chinese people or on certain aspect of culture or on a new policy when you don't actually understand it? Now, if you go to Chinatown and eat dim sum, you know whether you like it or not, and it's part of it is not. It's very important for me as the host to say that it's okay if you don't like it. Oh, you're a vegetarian. Let's not order the shrimp dumplings, right? I need to respect their boundaries too. But I think when it comes to policies and politics, it's structured in such a way that is not for regular people to understand. To start with the most recent, CARES Act, the PPP and the PUA. Every state has a different platform. And
Yeah.
in Massachusetts, we've been pretty lucky to, I mean, it's pretty rudimentary and you check, you get it. And so many people, I did some videos and as a user testing, people didn't even know how to use the website. The website didn't work, right? So I think it's important for me not to judge immediately, not to provide solutions, but to offer compassion and say, maybe it's time for us to have this conversation.
Yeah.
If you don't have any black friends, I'm not asking you to artificially make one friend and dig out and survey them and but try to branch out, try to branch out and have conversations with other people. So,
I love it because even in even in your thought that I'm not sure I have a solution, you brought up a solution, which is in the book that I wrote here. I guess it's over here. Which way is it? Over there. I can't.
yeah,
I
that's right.
I have the screen back here, so it always confuses me. Um, it's called the Mosaic, and the Mosaic is has so many beautiful imageries around just the term of mosaic. But that's not what the book is. The book is about a mosaic of people and a mosaic of consciousness, a mosaic of seeing different perspectives. It's about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day, and when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell
Mm-hmm.
him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out in search of the place called heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And the people he meets along the way are not the people that you would think he would meet. He doesn't meet the rabbis and the priests and the ministers and the clergymen and the swamis and the gurus and the Shinto priests. He meets the road worker and the homeless man and the trash man and the blind woman and the gardener and the juice man and the waitress. And he
Mm-hmm.
wonders, why am I meeting these people? Like, what are they going to do to teach me heaven? But I'm here with them. I might as well sit with them and listen to them and have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And he sits with them and he listens to them tell their stories. And Faye, in 100% of the cases, what he sees is the person he's with is not at all the person he thought they were when he first came up to him.
Mm-hmm.
We have a saying in America that you can't judge a book by its cover. But
Mm-hmm.
so many of us judge a book by its cover, even in the way we perceive people. And when he got to know them a little bit more, he realized that he didn't see anything the way it was. He saw the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he wondered what would happen if I got out of my own way. This is what I do with corporations too. Is I help people get out of their own way and see what's there, because we don't see what's there. We see ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
because all we do is see ourselves seeing what we see. When we move out of the way and slide to the left, what's actually there? And that's where innovation happens, and that's what happened for him. And so I love really what you're saying. And part of the reason that I'm doing these 50 conversations
Mm-hmm.
is because if we would only just take the time, how long does it take? Half an hour, 45 minutes out of the
Mm-hmm.
course of our lifetime to
Mm-hmm.
sit and have a conversation with someone we don't know? We walk away so much more enriched, more, so much more beautifully understanding people in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me jump
Thank you
back
for
in
that.
one last question so we can close up our lightning round. Um, do you think people are more different than they are alike, or more alike than they are different?
I think more alike than they're different.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So you spoke when I said to you, did you want to, do you, of the choice between speaking and taking time to say your message and listening to have other people speak their message and creating that format, you said listening, which is beautiful. I love you for that, because that's what I think we share already, something without even knowing each other. That's what we share in common. Do you think things in the world speak to us as well? Do you think, for instance, the environment speaks to us, that our body speaks to us, that our businesses speak to us? Or do you think it's just human beings that speak to us?
No, everything. I think, when I was growing up, I still have stuffed animals in my house, but I had a lot more growing up. And as an only child, I actually believed, I mean, not psychologically, but I was speaking to my stuffed animals. I would pretend they're my brothers and sisters. But there is another podcast called Everything is Alive. Now, as
Oh,
ironic as that show, I think you'll absolutely enjoy it. It's like that show is all about interviewing like a pillowcase, interviewing a water bottle, and it's so intellectual. I mean, it's highly intellectual. Like the conversations are just fascinating. Like, what is it like to be a water balloon? And and I do believe that everything is alive. I think the environment is speaking to us. I
yeah.
am proof of that. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't. It took me many, many, many years to realize that I am gluten sensitive. The reason why I didn't believe in that is because I did grow up eating a lot of buns, noodles, number one. So I grew up doing that. and I still really like, I love desserts, right? There's part of me saying it has to be something else, as silly as it, even though it's giving me a lot of evidence, like it has to be something else. So I was like bloated for a long time, very uncomfortable, like sharp pain in my tummy for years. And finally one day I decided that, you know what, I'm just gonna eat rice and just, and all the symptoms went away. And
Oh,
I think the environment is changing because I notice that it has such drastic effects on us, on our health. And, growing up, I didn't have any sensitive skins. And now I went out to the sun for the first time here in Boston just a couple of months ago. I was so happy. It's like the sun is out. A little bit of sunscreen. I came back. I was like covered with rashes. So
wow.
like, yeah. And it's like, oh my God. And they're just going away now. And it's, you realize that things are changing, like we're not scientists. We're probably not really learning the Wikipedia, but we're not really looking at what's going on in the world. And I think we really need to pay attention. And I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but I'm not suggesting that, oh, everybody should become vegetarian, everybody should cut gluten out. That, there are consequences. And it's so easy, something I've been educating my mom, because, for, I think, especially for older people, that they don't understand why 20-year-olds these days have such anxiety towards where all of this is going, because it's going to affect them, because they
Yeah.
cannot escape, right? Somebody mentioned that the way we ask people to vote for presidents or other things, like even, I don't care, head of an association, is that you have to ask the right people the right questions. And if you ask people who are over 85 their choices and their ideas of on environmental issues, some a comedian said maybe they don't care as much.
Right.
They don't really care what the answer is. And I think that's true. I think we have to be a little more aware in that
Yeah.
regard. So
Yeah. So, if you were to look at the situation that's happening in the world, whether you believe in global warming or not, whether
mm,
but the coronavirus is clearly here.
yes, it's here.
We're being asked to really reevaluate the way we look at men, the white men, and the way that men are treat women, and the way we treat each other. Do you think there's a message that the world is trying to say to us in general at this point in time?
I think we need to um, really reflect. I don't mean just get on our knees like for public, not that you have to bow down to someone else. You need to kind of really look inside yourself, even privately. Just uh, have a moment to say, am I in control? I think a lot of us don't feel like we are, and that is a situation that most people will panic. Most people make a lot of wrong, very unwise decisions. I think there is a message that, you know, I think the message I remember is one of my guests, Matt Lindley, very early on. It's like we have 250 episodes. He was like episode 5. I still remember something he said. He was watching um, astronaut like leaving kind of floating in space, and they said, wow, like the reflection they had looking back at earth is, it's not just you versus me, it's not just the Democrats against the Republicans or vice versa, it's us. Like you look at earth, you realize we're really in this together. But that visual has never been so clear, and it's so easy to divide us. And we're living in the United States, perhaps it's so easy to do here because you can point at the skin color, the gender, everything. You won't be able to really do as much as what we do here somewhere else, because there is racism everywhere.
Yeah.
In Asia, where people look identical, according to many, there is deep divide and racism in those countries as well. Um, but it's just harder to put a label on it, right?
Yeah.
It's basically rich versus the poor. It's just different labels. So I think there is an opportunity for us to come together. And I will also say that me as an immigrant coming to the US, that I still feel so much hope for this country. I see
Yes.
here as home. And I remember I was 18 and I got to ask my friends who were 16, 17 to teach me how to drive. Somebody has to be in the car with me. That was my message during my birthday on the 24th in June, not so long ago, that I
Happy
thanked
birthday.
everybody. Thank you. I thanked everybody who's been part of my life, because they aren't aware of the tremendous value and the support that they gave me.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to say. And just love to everyone who's listening to this, help one person and put a smile on your face. We just, you know, keep moving forward.
I love that. And I so thank you for saying it because it's come across to me in so many different ways. I told you that I had the chance to be with the richest people in the world and the poorest. I'd love to share with you one of the stories of the poorest person that I ever sat with.
Yeah, please.
He was a man by the name of Corey who was a homeless person in San Diego. And I'm a little bit of an empath, so I feel people. And I was walking down the street, and I just was so immersed in this feeling of pain and suffering of people passing me, that I just looked for I went to the sidewalk, to the buildings by the sidewalk to just sit down for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
and there was this homeless guy sitting there, and he said, "Don't you take my spot. This is my spot. I've been here for years." And I said, "Look, I really am not trying to take your spot. I just need somewhere place to sit." And I said, "I'll tell you what. During the time that you're here, or even during the time, tell me what you think you're going to make the day. I'll give you 10 times that and put it in your hat. I just need a chance to sit with you a little bit."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Whatever pain you're going through, the pain on the street is does it, the pain to sit with you is easier than the pain to sit there. And I just want to find out about you."
Mm-hmm.
And so it took him about 45 minutes to chill because he was very, like, "What are you doing sitting here with me?" But after about 45 minutes, we had a nice conversation. And finally, I said to him, "Corey, you just sit here and you watch these people pass you by
Mm.
all day, on all night. If you could stop them for a minute and just say something to them, what would you like to say?" And he said, "Danny, I wish that they would take just 10 minutes and find someone they don't know and just ask them how they are and just listen.
Yeah.
Don't try and fix them. Don't try and change them. Don't try and teach them. Don't try and tell them anything. Just listen." And I said to him, "Corey, out of all the things you could ask for, why would that be the one thing? Like, why is that so important to you? I love it, by the way, but why is that so important to you?" And he said, "You wouldn't know this about me, but about 3 months ago, being homeless is not an easy profession. People treat you as if you're worse than an animal. They treat you as a thing sometimes. So during this day about 3 months ago, people would come by, they would yell at me, they would curse me out. Some people would punch me as they walked by. A guy kicked me, one guy urinated on me, and a group of people just came up and beat the shit out of me and then took my money." And I thought, God, I'm not happy living this life, and I'm certainly not giving any joy to anybody else. I'm going
Right.
to go, when evening comes, I'm going to go around the corner because it's darker on the other street behind me, and I'm just going to take my life. And not 2 minutes after I had that thought, a man came up and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "How you doing, brother?"
Yeah.
And he said tears just started to come out of my eyes because nobody had done that with me before in a long time. And I looked at him and I said, "I'm not doing that well."
Mm-hmm.
And he had every opportunity to turn away and go. But he sat down next to me and he held me. And he said, "Tell me, I'm here for you. Just talk to me." He said, "Danny, it only took about 10 minutes. But after 10 minutes, I couldn't kill myself that evening because somebody who took time out of their day to come up to me, the person they didn't know, and just sit with me through my pain and my suffering and my tears. They didn't try and change me. They didn't judge me. They just held me."
Yeah.
And he said, "That man doesn't realize it because I never saw him again, but he saved my life that day.
That's right.
I've never seen Corey again, but he doesn't realize that every time I have the opportunity to tell his story, whether it's in a boardroom or a talk that I give or in a podcast or in just normal day-to-day conversation, I
Yeah.
tell his story, and now millions of people have heard his story.
Yeah. Incredible.
And the message that I would like to invite people is sort of what we're doing right here. Why not take 10 minutes out of the course of your life and go up to somebody you don't know and just ask them how you are? Ask them, "How are you doing?" And
Yeah,
just sit and
especially.
listen.
Especially right now, especially during the pandemic. And I think conversations are somehow happening more often and frequently, via Zoom or otherwise, FaceTime and phone calls. And I was part of it's called the Friends of Boston Homeless, and and it just these stories I've heard, not Corey's story, but
Right.
there are a lot of stories that are just incredibly life changing. And, uh, I so admire people, they're volunteers who I met or attorneys working in, banks and very high positions. These women have taken these jobs, I don't know, between us, maybe 20, $30,000 a year. And they decided to be administrators for, these organizations to help these homeless people. And exactly, nobody, they said, number one, nobody chooses to be homeless. It's
Yeah.
incredibly hard. So yeah, don't walk by people thinking that you're so much better, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I, I love that.
yeah.
So I've taken a lot of your time. Um, Wrapping up, it you've said so much, and I thank you so much for all you've given and your honesty that you've shown up with and your vulnerability. Is there one thing, if you could say just one thing now to a world that is listening to you, what would be that one thing you would say?
Um, I would say maybe a little opposite of that. Like, enjoy your life. Enjoy your life, celebrate the people who um, love you and are sending that positive energy to your life, whatever format. Obviously, not just money, not about money, but that spiritual connection, creative energy, and ideas that energizes you. However, if there are people doing just the opposite, if you belong to a group where people are sabotaging each other, where you leave, I think it's really important to send that message as well, because I've seen a lot of my family, my friends holding on to that because they once believed that it's part of their identity, but you have the choice. So that's what I have.
I
Yeah.
love that. What a beautiful message to say, enjoy,
Yeah.
and then if you no longer enjoy, leave. Just
Yeah.
the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, I was having a conversation with somebody, and I said, you know something, I'm gonna live my life by finding the places that I fit into, and I'm
Hmm.
gonna leave the places that I don't fit into. Like if I don't fit in with some of the people that I'm associating with, it doesn't mean I'm not going to love them. I'm just not going to spend as much time with them. Find the
Yeah.
places where you fit in and fit into those places and make those places beautiful and connect to those places because we're a mosaic. We'll all connect all the way around anyway.
Yeah. And I just want to say one more thing, which is I
Please.
learned that recently, I've seen this happen many times with me too, in my personal lives. But if you're listening to this, I want to just maybe speak directly to one cohort. If you are what people believe your retirement age, or whatever that number may be, you've made enough money, you're in your 60s, even though you're still very young. My mom is in her late 60s. She happens to be a prolific artist, as paintings show.
Beautiful, beautiful
Uh,
artist.
she's still painting every single day. That keeps her alive. Yes, I am a significant part of her life, but no, she also has something on her own. If you have that, it is such a privilege. Like, if you believe in God, if you believe in universe and earth, that's what they gave you, the special skill. My mom used to belong to a group of retirees who laughed at her, who don't believe that that's a good way of spending her time, who said things like, I don't have children, she doesn't have grandchildren, clearly something wrong with both of us, and she should just chill. She should not do what she's doing. And which gave her such an anxiety because she wants a sense of belonging. She's over here in the US and she wants to have a group of Chinese friends to talk to, hang out with. I said, you need to leave that group. And it took a long time. And finally, I helped her to basically drop out that group. I can tell you, Danny, within 24 hours, her well-being, her energy center is like restored.
Yeah,
Again, ups and downs, but you have to leave the poison well. You have to leave the wrong group. Yeah.
I love it.
So.
Faye, if people are as intoxicated with you as I am and are want to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that? And I'm going to list everything you send me in the show notes also. But how would be the best place for people to find more about you?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm pretty easy to find at Face World, but I do spell my name the Chinese way. So FeisWorld, everywhere on social media. A lot of what I'm working on right now is to help people bring their ideas online, in particular with live streaming and content creation. And I fell in love with a group of creative and fitness entrepreneurs. So that's kind of my primary focus. But if you have other questions, ideas, I welcome you to drop me a note and connect with me that way.
Fabulous. I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to sit with an imperfect stranger like myself, who is actually a perfect stranger to you, and to be open and vulnerable and real and honest, and to come into this room and just be yourself and share yourself with others. And I want to invite those of you who are listening, listen to these conversations, not only to hear the wisdom and the beauty and how easy it is to connect with people you don't know.
Thank you so much, Danny.
It's my honor. It's really my honor. But for those of you listening, wouldn't it be great if this became a contagious thing where you just started to do the same thing? Why can't other people have conversations with people they don't know? Stranger things have happened than meeting strangers and having strangers become friends. I think we're one step away, and it all just starts with wanting to listen to another person and wanting to hear them. Fei, thank you again. Those of you, thank you who listen all the time. Thank you to being here with us. Share these with your friends. Get it out. Allow it to go viral, and let's make life beautiful together. Until next time, don't be strangers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.